Hello and welcome to the Sales Code Leadership Podcast. I'm delighted to introduce a special guest this week, someone that I'm a big fan of. He's the founder of Sales Confidence, which is, among other things, a great networking and learning and peer community of revenue leaders based out of London, UK. James Ski. James, welcome to the call. How are you today?
Fantastic, Kevin. Thank you for having me. I've been following your progression with this podcast, and it's great to see the traction that you've got. I'm feeling great. It's the start of a new year. We've got exciting plans ahead of us for our global expansion of Sales Confidence. We're expanding the team, and we're just keen to continue supporting sales leaders by upskilling their sales team and supporting them with their peers, but also just developing salespeople at each stage of their career with their mindset, well-being, and performance.
Brilliant. Well, you've kind of answered the first question on the podcast, which is, what is it you get paid to do today?
Well, I can answer that in many ways. Do you know, I think what I get paid is to help people unlock their confidence. Mm-hmm. So I believe, because of the journey that I've been on as an individual, a lot of people assume that I'm just naturally full of confidence. And that's why I've called it Sales Confidence, and I just rock up everywhere, and I can put on a great show. Now, I do know how to do that, but that's because I've codified how to become confident. The real reason I created Sales Confidence is because I've lacked confidence at many stages of my life and my career. And because of that journey, I've had to understand at different points how to uncover my own confidence. So, if I think really what I'm paid to do, or why I show up every single day, is because I just want to help people get better at what they do and unlock their confidence so they can achieve more and reach more of their potential.
Oh, wow. I love that. That's, again, super interesting topic for me, because one of my passions, as you know, is understanding people's innate talents and helping them to build them into strengths. So I became an accredited coach for Gallup Strengths Finder 6 years ago now. And I learned a lot about myself in the process of taking that assessment, and I help other people to understand what's special about them. One of the things they measure actually is self-assurance. That's a talent. And you're right, some people are naturally self-confident. Many people are not, actually, and it's not always the people that you think. So I think you're absolutely right. If you can codify that, what works for you, you're developing that as a skill, right? Which is a great thing to do. So we'll talk more about that in a second. But before we get to it, I'd love to know, is this what you remotely thought you would be doing when you were 16, James?
Well, it's interesting. So at 16, I discovered business books and self-help books. Partly because I was very attracted to a young girl at my school.
Right.
We went traveling as a group of families to Cyprus, and her father was a successful businessman from my town where I grew up in Windsor. And he had a bunch of books that he had highlighted. So while he was on his sun lounge, I thought, well, I want to impress him and his daughter. I started picking up these books and reading them. And the cool thing about what he'd done, he'd highlighted all the pages of the book, so it was very easy to get to the good nuggets within these books. And one of the books was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is basically the concept of being a business owner and being an investor. And I hadn't really understood that previously. My parents work in the medical profession, wasn't really surrounded by business folk. So I actually did make a decision at 16 that I was going to be a business owner, and I spent my whole A-levels, university, early stage of my career pursuing that. So, I did know I was going to be a business owner. Did I know that I was going to be in sales, building a global network? No, of course I didn't. But, I feel very grateful for the journey that I've been on and kind of where I've got to now. And I actually think if I spoke to my 16-year-old self, he'd be pretty chuffed about, what I've been able to achieve up to this point.
I think you should be very proud of what you've done. And actually, I've interviewed 100 people now. I think you're only the second person that I've interviewed that said, actually, yes, this is broadly what I had in mind. Most people, as you know, because I'm interviewing sales leaders, obviously, most of the time, like yourself, most of them had no intention of getting into sales. It would just happen by accident. It's quite extraordinary. And therefore, you may not necessarily have everything you need to prepare you to be successful. But you clearly had a vision when you were young that you wanted to have your own business, and you've made that work. And I've watched a progression of sales confidence over the past, I don't know, how long have you been doing it for now? Is it 7 years?
Yeah, 6 years, I would say.
Yeah, it's just grown exponentially in the quality of the people that speak, quality of the people that attend, the business that you built online. I think it's phenomenal. I am impressed and a bit envious, actually.
Well, I appreciate it. And look, you've been a great advocate and supporter. And I genuinely appreciate people that continuously show up and let me know about their experiences. And like, you know, sometimes, honestly, I have moments sometimes at the events where I just kind of, you know, have a quiet word with myself, and I'm like, wow, like this is some real impact.
Yeah.
And, you know, people have getting insights that they can take away and apply to their day-to-day jobs and impact how they grow their companies. And it is pretty cool. And actually, my frustration is still how little people know about this on a global basis, right? I feel like I've got this pot of magic and goals that I just want more people to be aware of, and you know, we just haven't got that scale beyond the UK. We're working on that, so I'm excited about, you know, what's to come, really.
Can we talk a little bit about, just briefly, about your career in sales before
Sure.
we because one topic we do want to cover in detail. I know you're writing a book.
Yeah.
Which really looking forward to hearing more about that. How to Build Sales Confidence. What a great title. But how did you get into sales, and how do you get into sales in the tech sector? Give us a quick bio.
Sure. So at university, I did a number of jobs, had a number of kind of interesting kind of business projects. But one of those jobs was working commission only, doing door-to-door sales, persuading people in the suburbs to get their milk delivered. So I worked for this guy called Greg, who I'm very fond of, and I hope he's doing well. And basically his business was to keep the dairies afloat that were obviously in decline since, you know, Tesco's and Asda had taken over getting your milk from the shop just as part of the weekly shop. So what his job was to do was to get students to go and knock on doors in the suburbs and persuade people to keep having their milk delivered. So every day we used to rock up, we get dropped off somewhere in the home counties, 4 o'clock, and then we would literally just knock doors until 9 o'clock at night while people were coming home and persuade them to get their milk delivered. So that was a really, really like insightful experience into like human behavior. You know, invading someone's personal space is nothing more like uncomfortable than knocking on someone's front door when they really don't want to be interrupted because they've got their feet up or cooking dinner or with their kids or whatever. So like you become amazingly resilient. Like, you know, you hear 90 no's, people close the doors on you, dogs, you know, chase you. It's pretty interesting. So like that was like my real first taste of I guess showing up. And then I got I started applying for roles and got accepted via an assessment day, similar to Venetrix, our friend Elaine. You know, that concept of you get put in a room with other potential candidates. You have some hiring managers, and they just go, you're through. So I got through that process, and my first role was working for a telecoms company, and this telecoms company was super kind of old school. The guy that was my sales manager was a former mechanic, bless him. And like, it was just like, here's the yellow pages. That's your region, pick up the phone. And I'll never forget my very first cold call because I literally was shaking. I was so scared. And when someone picked up, I just hung up because I couldn't speak. So I actually know for all these SDRs that I encourage to get on the phone, I know how hard, you know, those early calls are. And actually, I'm amazed at some of the confidence I see from some young people that pick up the phone these days. So yeah, that was difficult. And then I ended up joining a recruitment business, which was a phenomenal kind of learning ground. Had to be in the office at 7 a.m., left at like 9 a.m., 3 days a week. You had like 200 of the most aggressive, hungry, young, ambitious recruiters building a phenomenal business with a with an entrepreneur that had a massive exit. But how I got into SaaS was basically while I was in recruitment, my partner at the time, we found out she was pregnant, and there was no way I could maintain the hours that we were doing. So my original goal was always to get into the software industry. I just hadn't found an opportunity. So I discovered a British B2B SaaS company called Huddle. And at the time, Huddle was extremely well regarded. They'd raised a lot of VC funding. In fact, they were the most backed B2B SaaS company in the UK at the time in terms of venture capital. I worked for two incredible leaders, a guy called Neil Ryland and Matt Wise. And that really gave me the window into SaaS. And it was from there that I realized like that was my home. And, I built the SDR team there. I developed my skills in enterprise sales. I kind of got a lot of insight into how to build a B2B SaaS business. And then from there, I joined LinkedIn. And LinkedIn was probably,
that was a bit of a segue. I mean, how did you get into? I mean, so what was LinkedIn like when you joined? It was quite small. Well, not smallish, but much.
No, it wasn't small even when I joined. I mean, look. So what I didn't mention there, but you've just asked the question, so I'll share. So I actually set up a company while I was at Huddle, based on the Predictable Revenue book by Aaron Ross, and I called it.
Oh, it's a great book.
It's called Outbound Sales, and what I was going to do was consult SaaS startups on how to build their SDR function. And I did that for a company called Ometria, and it was very successful, but I wasn't an employee, and I was kind of acting as like an early co-founder, but wasn't getting rewarded and was never going to share in the upside. So quite quickly, I realized this wasn't kind of sustainable. And a friend of mine worked at LinkedIn, who I used to work with at Huddle. I said, look, I've got two kids. I had a third on the way at the time. I said, look, I need something a bit more secure right now. And joined LinkedIn into the talent solutions business, which basically advises executives at FTSE 100 companies like Burberry, Lloyds Bank on how to leverage the LinkedIn platform. And it is just the most amazing company. Leadership.
When was this, James? Just on your CV, what year?
Yeah, so this was in 2014.
Right. I think I joined LinkedIn in 2010, I think, or something like that.
So at the time, like it was post the IPO, so they were a listed business.
Yeah.
It was a big company, like must have been 5,000 plus. I think at the time there was like maybe 300 million members. There's now 1 billion. So like that's kind of the scale of that platform. And it was a group of very bright individuals selling a world-class product and service offering that had a great reputation, amazing culture. We had a gym on site. We had full catering. We went all around the world for kind of sales kickoffs. We were extremely well paid. And I just kind of learned a lot about navigating enterprise accounts and how you do multi-million-dollar deals. And also kind of learn about the importance of being yourself and belonging. So LinkedIn had a huge initiative around DIBS, diversity, inclusion, belonging. And actually, because of that, that was the first time I became public and open about my bipolar disorder, which you're aware of. And they made me feel very comfortable in myself, and that gave me confidence. But I always knew that I was going to eventually do my own thing. When Microsoft acquired LinkedIn, they kept the businesses very separate, but a lot of gray suits turned up, and I was just like, that's not the vibe I'm looking for. So that's when I transitioned into sales confidence.
Okay. And when did you get the idea to build this community, Sales Confidence?
So even from that initial time period in 2014, I knew there was an opportunity to build a platform or a community for salespeople, because there was communities in the US, but they didn't exist in the UK or Europe. So I did see there was a gap in the market. And the very first event was supposed to be hosted by LinkedIn. They then basically didn't let me host it 24 hours before the event for some various political reasons.
Oh, boy.
And I ended up hosting it in some office block down the road. If you watch the original talks on YouTube, you can hear a pneumatic drill in the background, because the venue didn't tell me that they were building outside. So the people at the back of the event, there was about 100 sales VPs, couldn't hear the talks. However, everybody at that event was like, this is amazing. You know, it's great that you brought sales leaders together. You should do this more often. And that then gave me the confidence to say, okay, I know that I can bring people together. I didn't know what the business model was at that time. But fortunately, a couple of people showed up that were like, well, you know, do you need some sponsorship? One of those people was James Islay, the CEO and founder of Cognizant, which is a mega sales intelligence platform. And he said, look, I'll sponsor you. So he signed the very first check. And so I knew that it was going to be at least, it was at least going to provide me some cash. That's why I was like, okay, yeah, I can take this full time.
But you got 100 sales VPs to the first event.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's fantastic, isn't it? How did you do that? I mean, how much work was it to get those guys, all women sales leaders there?
Yeah, so I'd already been working on building my profile on LinkedIn. You know, I'd been doing a lot of blogging. I was one of the first to get access to LinkedIn video. So I was able to kind of make, videos about what I was doing, about the sales profession. So I had started to build a bit of a following. And then the same as it is today, I just went out to people I'd worked for, said, look, I'm putting this event on, and these are going to be the speakers. They're world-class speakers. You'll come and learn, you'll get drink, you'll get food included, bring some friends, bring some colleagues, and, just got to work. A lot of, still the same what I do today, a lot of DMing, a lot of email, and a lot of phone calls. And eventually, when you've got something that people believe they're going to get value from, they show up.
Where is the business today in terms of membership?
Sure. So the business has evolved. It's been a very rocky journey, because the core business used to be events. And obviously when COVID hit, that hit me for 6, and that probably took 18 months, 2 years kind of out of any kind of growth journey. But I was able to navigate it. We did a lot online, which increased our reach. But where we've evolved really is, Sales Confidence is an exclusive learning and development platform now. So in essence, we give access to salespeople and sales leaders and their teams access to mentorship, one-to-one coaching, peer group accountability circles, weekly masterclasses, and our open events and dinners. And all of that value is part of a membership subscription. So I feel now, as part of my new vision, that I've only just completed year 1 of this plan. So year 1, we got over 100 people to subscribe. We're now in year 2. Year 2, I want to get 1,000. And this is part of a kind of a 20-year journey to become the world's most valuable B2B sales community. So what we're doing this year, is expanding in other cities around the world. The idea is that we will be visible in at least the top 20 SaaS cities in the world, and then from there, people can kind of access the content from anywhere in the world.
And on the back of all of that, you're writing a book, which is coming out this year.
Yes. So, I've been writing it for 2 years. It's been a very arduous process, and I stopped writing for a period of time because, ironically, I was having massive imposter syndrome.
Okay.
And I was like, I really shouldn't be doing this. No one's going to be interested in what I have to say. I'm a fraud.
I'm interested. I can tell you, I'm interested. And the listeners to the Sales Code Leadership podcast are going to be very interested as well. So,
I'm glad. So where we've got to now is I have a final...
Oh, by the way, I'm going to interrupt you, which isn't a great thing to do in sales, but I think that's one of the great things about you. If I had to make an observation about you, the fact that you don't think you're the finished article, that you're the most wonderful salesperson, the greatest sales leader, I think that makes you a much more approachable human being and a better role model because it's real, and you're happy to talk about challenges that you've had in your life, real stuff, right? Real personal stuff like bipolar. And the listeners to this podcast will not know, but you and I have talked about it before. I've got very personal experience of bipolar disorder because one of our close family members has had it since he was 15, I think it was diagnosed. So I think it makes you a more real human being because that's what we are, right? At the end of the day.
I agree, and I appreciate that observation. Actually, that's kind of you to make. I genuinely feel like I am very transparent about my journey, and it's part of my story. It's part of my character. Don't get me wrong. I have kind of extreme ambitions, and my own self-talk is very positive in terms of how I perceive some of my skills. But I also recognize that it's a long journey, and there are lots of things that I've not done. There's lots of things that I can't speak as an expert on, and there are other things I do believe I can speak as an expert on, and I'd rather just be open and honest about those things so people can then choose what they listen to me for and not, right? And that's kind of where transparency comes from. I think pretending to be something you're not is just not helpful or healthy for an individual. So
completely agree.
In terms of the book, what was cool just before Christmas, I actually got the edited manuscript, so you actually see how it will appear in your book. And we've got the front cover now, and so basically that's being put together. We're going to do a black tie cinema kind of red carpet launch in the city. So I'm going to create a big occasion around it. And the concept of the book really focuses on three main areas, three pillars of sales confidence, which is mindset, well-being, and performance. And ultimately, why these areas are important, while as salespeople and sales leaders, you're striving to overachieve your targets, be a high performer, because of my experience of my bipolar and burning out, you need to do it in a sustainable way. So you need to take care of yourself. And also, whatever you want to achieve is all linked back to your mindset and how you think, make decisions, and behave and take action. So a huge proportion of the book is ultimately focused on understanding your why, kind of being able to dream big and kind of bring those dreams to life so you can expand the art of the possible when you start thinking about how you navigate your career or how you want to impact growing a business that you're part of. And then it's kind of things like, how do you practice daily gratitude, which really I didn't do until I was in my 30s. How do you appreciate the journey? How do you celebrate the small wins? Because the guarantee in sales is that you're continuously getting knocked back, you're continuously getting beaten up, you're continuously under pressure, you're continuously getting rejected. So how do you navigate that in a way that's sustainable? How do you look after your health? How do you look after your mental well-being so that you then can be someone that consistently can show up and be effective as a high performer? So we tie all of those concepts together. And, my belief is, if you're a 20-year plus veteran like yourself, there's a lot in there that you'll go, yeah, I get this, it's obvious. But I do believe there's just some reminders and nuggets in there that you'll go, that's actually something that I've not taken seriously or I've not considered. So I think, from a leadership perspective, there's some good insights. But for someone starting in their career, for me, this book is a Bible and will really help you shape how you start so that you can sustain a long career in sales.
Well, and it can be a long career. I'm a good testament to that. It can be a long career at the end of the day, right? And you need to run it like a marathon, not a sprint, don't you? Bearing in mind, preserve your resources, mental and physical, across that journey.
You're right. And I think what happens, you land in sales, you get a taste for the money, you immediately get put under pressure, and you read all the hustle porn on Instagram and LinkedIn. You start doing your 5 a.m. starts in your ice baths or whatever. And I just think, you just get a skewed perspective that it's all or nothing. and nothing matters other than the number. And if you don't achieve your number, you're worthless. And there's a massive kind of huge cohorts percentage-wise of salespeople that on an ongoing basis are not hitting their number, and therefore they don't feel good about themselves. And that shouldn't really you shouldn't measure your self-worth based on your sales performance at all. You should work on yourself, if you're not performing, absolutely. But to be depressed, for example, because you're not performing in sales, that shouldn't happen for a long time, in my opinion. I'd like people to just have self-belief and essence that they will figure it out and navigate it. And maybe you're not in the right company right now, you're not in the right role, it's not the right time for you, but you will figure out how to navigate the difficult stages that you're going through right now.
So what do you think made you a successful salesperson, James? What was your secret sauce for selling? Other than the book, so these three factors that go in, but how would you judge yourself in terms of those three pillars then? Where were you strongest? Where did you struggle?
So I definitely, one of the things I want to be known for, when I die, is I want people to say, James was a tryhard. Like, he literally just tries his best. Mm-hmm. And so firstly, from a mindset perspective, I have a high performance sport background. So, I was a pretty decent rugby player, but I was kind of a national competitive rower, competed internationally. Friends of mine were Olympians, but I never made Great Britain. But I was around world-class athletes, world-class coaches from a very young age, like 15 years old. So I very much developed kind of a work ethic, which required me to push myself to my limit and beyond. Now, that's kind of okay in sport. It doesn't work in business, because in essence, pushing yourself to the limits causes you to crash. And there's only so fast you can type and make phone calls, right? Like, it's not an exertion like sport is. And naturally, when you exert yourself in sport, you have to go through a recovery. But in business, I was just very obsessive and intense. I mentioned earlier on this call, when I was in recruitment, I used to get in the office 7 a.m., 9 p.m. at night. I'd come into the office on Saturday. I just had this relentless mentality to outwork everyone around me. So that did mean I was often the top performer, because just no one could compete with that work ethic. But it was unsustainable. It led to many more hospital admissions because of my underlying bipolar condition, but also I was just crazy obsessive about overworking. So my weakness was actually also a strength, but it was the fact that I would overwork. So well-being, I didn't take care of myself. The other thing is, I believe, I like to think that I'm very likable. Now, I believe likability is something that you can train and develop. And I genuinely, from feedback and experience, that buyers that have bought from me have had a great experience. They like that I'm bringing value to their business and themselves. And this is not about being nice, actually. Like, just being nice for the sake of it, that's not going to get you results. But being consultative and challenging someone, but them still liking you at the end of it, even when you're telling them they're wrong, that is actually a skill. And I am extremely effective at getting people bought into me as an individual, and my personality, and then for them to trust me that I can take them on a journey as they're navigating investing, whatever that might be in terms of a product or service. So I think that would be another kind of superpower.
I think one of the reasons you're so likable is you're genuinely interested in other people, and you're very much someone who wants to help them, because you come from a place where perhaps I didn't get the help I might have wanted or needed at various points in my life and career. And you had your challenges, right? My observation about salespeople is, I wonder what your thoughts are on this, that most of us are actually inherently insecure. Even people that are naturally self-confident, in sales are often insecure. We're all competitors, right? You were a competitive sports person, And in competition, you always have to prove yourself. You're only as good as the next event, only as good as the next quarter or the next month or the next year, aren't you? Which is why we're often a bit fragile as well under the surface.
Well, this is very good observation. So ultimately, even when I think about hiring salespeople, I'm looking for those salespeople that have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, if you come from wealth, right, and you've had a great education, like really, do you need to put yourself into challenging, scenarios where, your results are measured by an additional income? Like, probably not. And I'm not saying there's not a lot of successful salespeople and business people that have a wealthy background, not at all. But if you generally look at salespeople, like, there's a need to prove themselves, and there's a need to kind of fulfill something that wasn't felt maybe as a child, wasn't felt as a teenager or in their early adulthood. And it's that kind of need to show up and prove themselves that is rewarded with money and commission. That means that they feel better about themselves. But this is also the inherent problem to what I was talking about earlier. That then also makes us extremely fragile, because when we're not performing, we question ourselves, because we have all of these doubts about our character and ourselves. And this is why so many people in sales, burn out and suffer from ill mental health, or, self prescribe alcohol or drugs, or, other activities that, maybe no one knows about, because they're just not happy in themselves, because the reality is, if you're what I call fixed salary employee, you can get away with not doing a lot, showing up, and you're still going to get paid at the end of the month, right? Yeah, there's some reviews in there, of course there is, and you should do your best. It's black and white in sales. Like, if you're not performing, if you're not delivering, you're not hitting your numbers. Everyone in the business can see, everyone knows about it. You have to live with it. You get told that you're not performing. You get told that you're not good enough. And, quite quickly you can get moved on out of the business. And it doesn't matter how good of a performer you are in one place, often your time is up as a sales performer, and especially as leaders, right? And I'm sure, and I've seen some of your interviews, part of the reason why what you do is so valuable is because leaders' tenures only 18 months. And the reason that is business changes, your time's now up. But hold on a minute, I'm the lady that's just built this business. Yeah, but we're now at a different phase. We don't think you're good enough. What? Yeah, the board have said, we need someone that's done this before. You've not done it before. Well, give me a chance. No, I'm moving on. So, like, it's a very, very difficult role. And yes, you're right. I think actually salespeople are very sensitive, maybe more so than some of their peers, because they're trying to fulfill something that's missing, maybe.
So listen, with all this going on, with running this successful, it's going to be what is now becoming a global business, writing a book which is going to be published this year. What is it you do to unwind at the end of a busy day, James?
So I like massages. Right. Often, I'll have a full body massage because I feel I need to do something kind of active to relax. Kind of spending time with my kids, if I'm honest, is probably the most enjoyable. I try not to, think about work and give them my full attention, and they're my anchor. They're people that they don't care about sales confidence. They don't care about game ski on a podcast. They've got no interest in kind of, the fanfare. So like that is genuinely something relaxing. We play tennis. I take my boys rugby. I like the gym. I like to run. So that's generally how I unwind. And I do kind of binge on probably Netflix. If I think when it gets to the point that my kids are asleep, and I'm not looking at my phone, then I'll just chill out and watch some movie, and that's kind of me.
Sounds pretty nice. I like the sound of that. That's something which sustains you, manages you to balance your work and your private life a little bit, and spending time with your family. I mean, you're never going to regret spending time with your family.
No, and the other thing is I sleep. So, and I can do this during the week. So meaning that not everyone has this advantage. I get that. I run my own company, but I will literally just switch off. I did it yesterday. I took 2 hours out of my afternoon and went to sleep. I just needed the time to chill. So like I'm very flexible in how I allocate my time. If I need to wind down, I need to take some time out, I would just do it. And that's now allowing me to sustain when I'm on, because I still work very hard and I still, travel a lot. But the difference between doing that for myself versus for someone else, like obviously when you work for someone, you are required to show up. If I decide I don't want to show up to this afternoon, then I'm fine. No one's going to tell me what to do. So, that is the freedom of running your own business, which obviously not everyone has that advantage.
We've only got time for one last question. Are you ready for it?
Go for it.
Okay. What's the one thing you wish you knew at the beginning of your career?
Whatever pathway or whatever goal that you have, someone has already done it before. Spend more time with the people that are doing what you want to do, and just listen, ask questions, learn, and follow. I believe that I could have achieved so much more, so much quicker if I just went and sought out those people. And that's basically what I provide people as part of the Sales Confidence membership now. I'm giving them access to mentors, coaches, peers, so that they can accelerate their learning rather than, trying to figure all this out for yourself. You just don't need to do it. It's all been done already. The information's out there. Just go find those people, spend time with them, and you will get to where you want to get to. So that's what I would advise my younger self.
And I find it hard to believe that anybody listening to this podcast has not heard of Sales Confidence, but let's assume you may be touching some parts of the world that you don't regularly get to. Where can they find out more? How should they approach it? What would you recommend they do?
Sure. So, I'd recommend checking out salesconfidence.com, signing up to our free newsletter, where we share insights on the SaaS industry, sales development, coaching, etc. I'm available on all channels, James Ski, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram. So, give me a follow over there. If you have heard this conversation, let Kevin and I know, because it's cool. If people get to the end of a podcast, really appreciate it. And I'm happy to jump on a call with someone that has actually listened to this, because I value the fact that you've invested your time, and therefore I'd love to get to know you and kind of share more what we're about.
And when's the next physical face-to-face meeting in London?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I'm not sure when this podcast is out, so I'm sure the dates might have been random, but we're basically doing 2 or 3 a month for various different levels. It doesn't matter if you're an SDR, individual contributor, sales VP, CRO, GM. We have an event for you that will meet your expectations, give you access to a great room of people and some high quality speakers and learnings. And then, of course, if you opted into the membership, then we surround you with those people on a daily, weekly basis.
Love it. James, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation.
Kevin, absolute pleasure. Fantastic work you're doing, bringing these stories to life. So I really appreciate it. And thanks for the observations as well.
And thank you to the listener. Please do give us a review if you like what you hear, because it helps really to boost the ratings.